Hello AS, welcome to your next bit of your second session of bridging, which is about reliability and validity. Hopefully for you, for a lot of you, most of these terms will be ones that you're recapping as opposed to brand new ones that you've never heard before. However, if they are some of them are totally brand new to you, it doesn't matter, you didn't need them at AS, but you definitely want them for A2, and they're twofold. One, because you could be specifically asked about these types of validity and reliability, or the ways of assessing reliability and validity, and these do come up quite often because they are tricky concepts to explain, and the exam board wants to check that you fully understand them. And secondly, because you can use them at different points. So as you already know, you've probably at no point were you asked to define validity in any of your AS exams. However, you probably use the word validity, or you hopefully use the word validity a lot in evaluation points. So they're incredibly useful for extending and exploring and evaluating points that you make, even if they're not specifically asked for, although that is likely in the second year. So you have validity. Does it measure what it claims to measure, which of course you are familiar with, but a good example of this would be intelligence. They used to believe that that if you measured the circumference, the size of your head, that would be a good indication of how intelligent you were. The question is, does it measure what it claims to measure? It claims to measure intelligence, but actually it's just measuring the size of your head. So that is an example of it lacking validity. And the same with English ability, the same old example I use all the time. We claim to measure English ability, but we use a GCSE maths paper. So it claims to measure English, but does it measure that? No, it measures maths, so it lacks validity. And again, internal validity, which I know you're already good with. Can we be confident of cause and effect? So can we be confident it's only the IV affecting the DV? And if the answer is no, because there's lots of extraneous variables, then we would lack internal validity. So a key thing to look for is extraneous variables there with that one, but you know both of those. Other ones that again won't be new to you. Population validity, you'd ask, can the results be applied to the target population? If the sample is representative, then the answer is yes. And if you think about the different sampling methods, stratified sampling, collect a sample that is high in population validity because it's representative and therefore the results can be generalised. So you've got all that terminology you can use just for a really simple point. Whereas opportunity or volunteer sampling, you can't, because you can get volunteer bias where people who volunteer are more interested or more helpful, so it's not a representative sample. Or opportunity, you might get investigator bias because they might carefully select where they collect their participants from, such as wanting to show that men are better than women at maths, or they collect their men from the A-level maths department and they collect their women from another subject that isn't as good as maths. You could argue English, although of course people who are good at English could be good at maths and vice versa, so we'll just be careful about stereotypes for that one, but that's the basic idea. You can manipulate your results in that way. Population validity, there's tons of studies that you've looked at that lack population validity. Ash's study, Milgram's study, Zimbardo's study, they all have, and I don't know if this is a term that's been shared with you before, an androcentric sample, so it's very male oriented. They're all males. In their original studies anyway. So if the answer is that the results can be applied to the target population, it's high in population validity. If the answer is no, then it's low in population validity, so we can't generalise because the sample is not representative. Temporal or temporal validity, can the findings be applied to this time period, the current time period that we are in, appropriately? And again, I'd expect this is one that you've come across because Ash was very much a child of its time, so of course at that time it was encouraged in America not to conform, not to stand out. So you are likely to find very high rates of conformity due to the hunting of communists, and anybody who stood out would be punished and in various different ways. However, certain studies, you could argue, even though they're quite old, they do have temporal validity. For example, any memory research probably has temporal validity because memory shouldn't change a huge deal over time. It shouldn't be influenced by context, although of course the way that our memories work now is very different because of technology. But don't automatically assume just because it's old that it lacks temporal validity. You need a valid justification, such as Ash's. And finally, ecological validity, which you all need to use carefully and sparingly. However, Can the findings be applied to real life? Does the study lack mundane realism? Does it lack mundane realism, everyday reality? Does it seem like an everyday task? Yes, high in ecological validity. No, low in ecological validity. And of course, so it applies to the task. Is the task natural, and is the environment natural as well? So memorising words off a board and recalling them, that is an artificial task. Sitting in a lab is an artificial environment. Memorising a shopping list and then going to a supermarket are a natural task and a natural environment. So they would be high in everyday realism and would have ecological validity. Now, potentially the new stuff, and again people might have been introduced to this, assessing validity. So there's two ways of assessing if something has validity. There is face validity, which is a really nice simple one, but just be careful when you use it. If it's a small number of marks, use face validity because it's dead easy to explain, it's easy to get right. However, if it's a higher number of marks, it's going to be very difficult to get face validity, because the process of assessing face validity is much simpler, so you can't access the marks. So does it look like it measures what it claims to measure? Ask an expert. So the question you would ask is, does it look like it measures what it claims to measure? So if you're looking at an IQ test, you would be checking, does it measure what it claims to measure? Does it look like it's measuring intelligence? And the best way to do that, of course, would be to ask an expert. So somebody in the field that can comment on does it look like it's measuring what it claims to measure, essentially. So that one's that, and then we've got current validity as well. So does it agree with previously validated measures? And we'll give here again the example of an IQ test. So with this one, the way you would check is you would get your participants, you want to start a whole new IQ test, so you would write that IQ test and you would ask participants to complete it. You would then ask them to complete a Simon and Binet IQ test, or an IQ test that is previously validated, so one that's been around for a very long period of time that we're confident accurately measures what it claims to measure. We would then compare the results from those two tests, and if they concurred, so if you say I concur, you mean I agree. If the two tests are similar, if they agree, then that suggests that your test has validity. And there's an example here as well, I don't know if you can see, of concurrent validity. So you've created a 42 item depression scale just here. That's your personal one. Sorry, that's the one that the standard, actually, so 42 item depression scale, a standard depression scale that's existed for a long time, that's viewed as a validated measure. And then Stephanie, whoever that is, has created a new depression scale. Both participants complete both of these, and then they compare the results. If they're very similar, high in concurrent validity because they both agree. So concurrent, concur, agree, or low in concurrent validity if they're both quite different. Okay, and it's as simple as that. So face validity, does it look like what it claims to measure? Ask an expert. Concurrent validity, does it agree with a previously validated measure? Complete the two tasks, compare them. Simple. Okay. Okay, and so this is an example using the mark scheme of the way you would answer an IQ test. So the two ways that you would do this, you want to decide if the Stafford-Binet intelligence scale, which is a type of IQ test, has validity. You would either say, you'd ask people if the questions used are a good measure of intelligence, which is an example of face validity, or you'd give participants an alternative established IQ test and check to see whether those two data sets positively correlate, with a correlation of a positive correlation of plus 0.8, and that's concurrent validity, exactly as we've discussed. And then for improving validity, so on the specification it does ask you to be able to improve validity as well, which I think your knowledge of validity is strong, so you would be able to do this. You'll be able to do this without me sharing too much information. So make notes on the previous things that I've discussed for validity, and then I'd like to read through the task and think, pick out problems, where is the lacking validity, and then tell me why is it lacking validity, and then tell me how you would improve that validity, and we'll discuss those. They are not anywhere near as complex as you think, so don't overthink it. Just think simple ways that you would improve the validity as a psychologist. And then reliability. Has it been repeated and the same results found? You all know about that. If you can replicate it, you can check for reliability. Now, we've discussed this a lot. So just because if you can replicate something, does that mean you'll definitely find the same result the second time? No, you could find a different result, you could find the same result, but it allows us to check the reliability so we know whether it's reliable or not. So replication doesn't make it more reliable, but it allows us to check reliability. And the two ways, so that's the only, you only need to know about reliability, but the ways that you assess reliability, there are two ways. Inter-rater reliability, which is always done in observation. So make sure you only ever talk about inter-rater or inter-observer reliability in an observation. This is where you have two observers and they sit separately, so not to be influenced by one another. So if one ticks a behavioural category, the other goes, oh yeah, I saw that too, honest. Or I should be putting that down. You sit them separately, or you record it and get them to watch it in separate rooms, whichever one you would prefer. Then you compare the results and you conduct a correlation to see how similar they are. So inter-rater reliability and concurrent validity are very similar, but just some slight differences in that this is for observers and it's for reliability, whereas the other one's concurrent, so it's more likely to be questionnaires, and it's about validity. Two separate observers, complete the observation, compare the results and see if their results correlate. And then there is test retest, which is always for a questionnaire. So just make sure you're always talking about questionnaires when you talk about test retest, apologies, which is where you complete the test and then about a week later, and the reason they pick it a week later is because that's just long enough for you to have forgotten the answers so you can't really remember them, but also it's not so soon that not so long ago that you've changed completely. So if it was a depression scale, you do the test and 7 days later you've just long enough to forget what you said 7 days ago. However, if you do the test 5 years later and expect them to correlate, well, hopefully someone who's experiencing depressive symptoms 5 years ago might not be experiencing them, and that's not because the test is not accurate, it's because there's been a passage of time. So you complete the test, you would wait about 7 days, roughly a week, you'd complete the test again, and again you would compare the results and see if there's a correlation. The more similar the results, the higher in reliability your questionnaire, your self-report method is. Okay. And then we'll go through it. So again, something that I've taken from the mark scheme. So for the test retest, the same participants will complete the questionnaire on more than one occasion, so at least twice. Each participant's score from the first occasion should correlate with his or her results from a later occasion shown on a scatter graph. So you would correlate it and then you would look at the scatter graph. You could even talk about correlation coefficient of plus 0.8. And then the strength of the correlation should be assessed using either Spearman's rho or Pearson's R. Now don't worry too much about those. They are types of statistical tests like the sign test, and we look at them next year, but they are statistical tests to check the significance of a correlation. There should be a strong positive correlation between the two sets of scores to be considered reliable. So that's exactly what was said on a mark scheme. So both times it said mark scheme, I've taken those answers from a mark scheme, and that is what the information that they would want to see. So complete the questionnaire on more than one occasion, should correlate them, check the strength of the correlation, and it should be a strong positive correlation. Okay, and then improving reliability. So the example here, psychologist is using the observational method to look at verbal aggression in a group of children with behavioural difficulties. Pairs of observers watch a single child in class for a period of 1 hour and note the number of verbally aggressive acts within a 10-minute time interval. So this is a question that was asked on an exam paper, and the suggestions of how to improve reliability were provide training on how to use the behavioural categories, so give them some training, but to get enough marks you would need to mention provide training, but also what is the training on, so how to effectively use and understand the behavioural categories. Establish clearer behavioural categories, so we've talked about it lots, operationalise them to make sure they are distinct and they are observable. So make sure they are separate, they're not overlapping in any way, and that they are things that you can observe, so not emotions or not something that's vague and unclear. And finally, filming the child so the observer can practice the categorizations as well. So you could, again, that links in with the training. You could observe, record the children, and then get them to complete the observation several times so they can practice. So that's an example of something off the mark scheme. Okay, so if you want to complete all the activities in your booklet, and we will go through those in lesson. Thank you very much.